Italy, a debate is raging about the Prime Minister's domination over public broadcaster RAI, which her critics have dubbed Tele Meloni.
Ciao a tutti e ben ritrovati.
So in late May, Giorgia Meloni took to social media to confront her opponents by trolling them.
Quindi eccomi qui in una nuova puntata degli appunti di Giorgia, che però ho deciso di ribattezzare Tele Meloni. Perché l'unica Tele Meloni che esiste è questa. Tutto il resto sono fake news di una sinistra che, essendo abituata a occupare la televisione, pensa che gli altri siano come lei.
By teasing her critics, the Prime Minister is twisting the narrative in her favor. Unfortunately, Tele Meloni is real. In RAI News 24, where I work, our director is a renowned Meloni supporter. Recently, we've seen Meloni's speeches transmitted live, in full. In one particularly outrageous case, for 46 minutes straight, without any kind of journalistic examination whatsoever.
Italy's Prime Minister says it openly. She thinks it's time for RAI to change. Previous governments locked Meloni's party, Fratelli d'Italia, out of the governance of the public broadcaster. And now the far-right ruling coalition wants to redress what they see as historic left-wing bias. Journalists we've spoken to at RAI insist what is happening goes far beyond balance. They say Meloni and her allies are out to seize control of the network, bend it to their will, and purge or sideline anyone who gets in the way. Which is why all the journalists we've spoken to have asked to remain either anonymous or off the record.
Among ourselves, we journalists say that this government is taking no prisoners, which is to say that they are placing people loyal to them in all key roles in a methodical manner. You can see it in our newsrooms, in our programs and news bulletins. It leaves less and less space for voices tied to the opposition.
People talk about this as though political interference in RAI has only just begun, but it's always been there. What I'm saying today is the same I've seen in previous years. There's a lot of politics, a lot of opportunism. Perhaps those who've only just realized RAI is under government control were asleep years ago. Or maybe they're just filing their complaints 8 years too late.
The editorial makeup of RAI has always been political because of what is called lottizzazione, the divvying up of the network's most important jobs among different political parties. Broadly speaking, RAI Uno has tended to be pro-government, RAI Due centre-right, and RAI Tre centre-left. In 2015, centre-left Prime Minister Matteo Renzi introduced a new position at the top, a CEO with broad decision-making powers. That was meant to end the domination by politicians, but seemingly only made things worse. Less than a year after Meloni came to power, then CEO Carlo Fuertes said he was forced to resign under pressure from her government. He was replaced with Roberto, whose political stance, Italian media have reported, changes with the wind. RAI also got a new Director General, Gianpaolo Rossi, who is staunchly pro-Meloni and has a history of racist and pro-fascist views.
RAI has always been used by political parties, but at least before we had a fair play of sorts between the parliamentary majority and the opposition. This fair play agreement is gone. This is outright appropriation. It's a very different situation. What we have is a single party that manages 3 separate channels.
There are a lot of stories we weren't allowed to report on. There are certain stories we won't even pitch anymore because we know they'll get rejected by an editor. Obviously, it isn't the Prime Minister herself intervening in RAI's editorial choices, but clearly a whole system of supervision has been set up by RAI's governance, which serves as a control filter. Even satire was often at the heart of many RAI programs' success. It's gone, because it's no longer permitted to harshly criticize those who are in power.
If you look at our coverage of Gaza, for example, because the government is supporting Israel so unequivocally,
ad un bar e da un anno, buonasera, e da un anno ambasciatore di Israele in Italia. Questa è l'occasione per rinnovare la nostra antica solidarietà
There is a lot of pressure from editors and various executives to tone down certain terms. When discussing the ongoing massacres in Gaza, journalists are asked not to use certain words to soften the language. I have never seen this level of censorship and manipulation as with this story. If you speak out against it, the only result is that the system expels and marginalizes you.
At every level of RAI's management, there are changes happening that suit the government's narrative. In May, the broadcaster's Union of Journalists, USIG RAI, organised a strike to protest stifling control by Meloni's government they said was turning RAI into a mouthpiece.
Preferiamo perdere uno o più giorni di paga che perdere la nostra libertà.
One of the reasons RAI was able to stay on the air during the walkout is because of a new counter-union set up last year, UniRAI, whose members kept working.
They describe themselves as an alternative pluralist union, and it just so happens that all the senior managers who were recently promoted are members of this union. UniRAI basically carries out a lobbying function rather than safeguarding workers' rights. It is lobbying to advance a particular narrative and to advance the careers of a specific group of people.
Francesco Palese is the secretary of the new union, UniRAI.
Abbiamo fatto nascere.
We have given birth to this new trade union in order to represent all of RAI's journalists. All too often, RAI's historic trade union has been the mouthpiece of a single line of thought. To these anonymous colleagues who call us scabs, and to those who see us as a trade union that's controlled by the board, that is a very serious accusation. If they have evidence of this, let them report us. Otherwise, this is nothing more than defamation.
Diffamazione.
There are also journalists who don't strike because they're afraid. These are the people who won't be interviewed, not even anonymously. It's just like Italy under fascism. It's not that all Italians were fascists, but many went along with it out of fear.
RAI is just one front in Prime Minister Meloni's battle to remake Italy. She says she wants to liberate Italian culture from the hegemony of a left-wing elite. Part of that effort involves rewriting Italian history. Ministers in Meloni's government have celebrated the achievements of fascism, while whitewashing violent episodes from Italy's past, like its colonial rule in Africa.
Gli italiani, sia nel periodo pre-fascismo, sia durante il fascismo, nei suoi 100 anni di colonie, in Africa ha costruito e realizzato. Noi invece abbiamo una cultura civilizzatrice.
Italy has never truly confronted its history of fascism. You still see monuments to the fascist era all over Rome. Prime Minister Meloni has at times tried to excuse the fascist crimes of the past. She wants Italians to be at ease with their history because it helps justify the vision she has for Italy today.
La volontà di riportare la destra.
The objective here is not just about taking politics toward the right. It's also about a change in the culture by rewriting history. We have to face up to it. There's always been censorship.
La censura c'era.
Italian history is not especially marked by liberalism. We have to admit that.
Non è una storia di grandissimo liberalismo, dopo tutto.
A country without freedom of the press is a country that cannot be democratic. RAI has been hijacked by a single point of view, one that promotes traditional family values, Catholic values, patriotism, and makes a great show of anything that is linked to the institutions, to the army. How can anyone understand what's really going on in the country when the accepted narrative of events is so singular, so unquestionable, when there is no criticism, no right to criticize?
Thanks for watching. Now hit that like button and leave us a comment to let us know what you think about anything that we covered this week. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter. Does anyone really call it X? Facebook and Instagram for updates from the show. Links are in the description.